What they're doing is they're moving all the industries and all the food production around. This is what fracking's all about, folks. Well, at least in this country anyway, because fracking is destroying the water table and it's destroying the food bowl. So Australia will not even be able to grow its own food. We will have to import food from overseas. So this gets Australia locked into the foreign economic model. It gets Australia interdependent with other countries because they want this interdependency. They don't want any countries to be self-sufficient, because if a country is self-sufficient, it doesn't fit into the global economic model that they have, and it can't be controlled. That's the thing. If you're a self-sufficient country, you can't be controlled. That's why they don't want self-sufficiency on farms and self-sufficiency anywhere within our community, because if you are self-sufficient, then you are not able to be controlled. If you haven't broken a law, then you're not able to be controlled. So they outlaw self-sufficiency, and then they make you a criminal for trying to be self-sufficient. So now they've got you both ways, and that's why they do it. But again, what they institute in these cases is not law, it's legislation. And in fact, in their actions of inflicting harm upon people who break their legislation, the government itself and the police force who support the government are the ones who are actually breaking the law. Because if a law has been broken, there's been an injured party, and the only people who are injured from the breach of a statute is the person who is prosecuted. Because from the breach of a statute, there is no injured party. So it's the government and the police that are breaking the law. And until the people wake up to the fact that they've been had, and the police wake up to the fact that all they are doing is supporting corporate corruption at the expense of actual law, then we're never really going to get anywhere. So you've got to try to even break down the barriers with your police folks. I mean, a lot of these cops are actually nice people. I mean, sure, there's a fair amount of sociopaths in the police force, but a lot of them are actually nice people who join the force because they want to help. So you've got to let them know what the law is and what legislation is. And don't think that they know what the law is, folks, because they don't. Because if they did, they wouldn't be out there every day breaking the law in order to enforce legislation, which is not law. So you've got to understand that a lot of these cops are just brainwashed. They're taught to believe that which is legal is that which is lawful. But it's not. It's simply rules that were made up by politicians. And all these rules are done to divide society, to bring about total criminalisation, to extract all the resources of the country, and to remove the sovereignty of the nation and create interdependency, global interdependency. That's what all of these laws and legislations are about, all the piracy acts, everything. It's all a complete scam, folks, and none of it is actual law. And we have an opportunity to change that. We have an opportunity to change it this year if we would simply wake up to the scam that this is. And the whole thing is really such a scam, folks. It is a system of economic tyranny that has been imposed upon the entire human race. And what we are seeing in the last year is the consolidation of that tyranny. And folks, a lot of what has been used to accomplish this is the dehumanization of humanity that's occurred in the last couple of generations. And by using the term generations, folks, I'm not saying that modern generations of kids are less human than their elders. I'm simply referring to that time frame. I'm thinking of about the last 30 or 40 years. We've seen that all of humanity has been greatly dehumanized. Humanity's been reduced to a state where people really don't notice what's going on around them. They don't really have that connection to the people around them, and so they don't really care. And they very much live more and more in a virtual world. We're seeing young kids becoming adults a lot earlier, or acting like adults a lot earlier, and what a lot of young kids perceive adulthood to be is a time when you put on fancy clothes and go out and shop and buy lots of stuff and become as superficial as you can. And of course, when you do grow up into adulthood, then you don't ever want to have children. Not too many modern couples want to have children because they're too busy with their careers. And a lot of other kids are far more happy in a virtual world than what they are in the real world. And something else that's happened in regards to the virtual world is the way we have basically taken the entire knowledge bank of humanity and placed it all into a virtual world. Not too many people have books these days. Most people have all of the information that they own, all of the data that they own, all stored on hard disks or hard drives. So it all exists in virtual reality. We've even found libraries recently throwing out lots and lots of books and saying that they've replaced them with digital versions of them. So now all that knowledge is on hard drives as well. We've also seen children in schools using calculators and things like this. Not too many modern kids can add up or do maths very well because they always use calculators at school. When I was a kid at school, you weren't allowed to use a calculator. I mean, you couldn't even have a slide rule on your desk when you were doing an exam. You had to do it all in your head. Whereas now, kids can not only have slide rules, they don't even use slide rules anymore, they use calculators. And they use calculators for every single math problem that they've ever had. And so what we see here is a very, very sly, underhanded manipulation whereby all of our information about our past, about our history, about everything, all the knowledge that we have, the knowledge of how the system runs, everything that we've learnt and saved, and a lot of the research that people have done, it's all kept in a virtual world. And we've seen a lot of people's calculations and thinking is also done by computer. And so this has now placed us in a very dangerous place, because if the grid is shut down, then all of that knowledge is lost. Suddenly all of mankind's history goes out the window, and then they can simply rewrite history from this point. We've seen this happen in the past in various civilizations. There was certain dynasties in China that burnt all the books and all the libraries of everybody that existed before them and decided history should start from that point. But what we're seeing with this whole New World Order system that's being put in place is we're seeing this being done globally. See, they've gone around in the last few hundred years, they've wiped out all the native cultures and they've westernized all the cultures that were left. And they've worked very hard to destroy this world history, folks. I mean, look at what happened in the invasion of Iraq. The first thing that happened was the utter destruction of the library and the museum and all of the vast amount of history that was held in the Iraqi museum. That was the first thing that was trashed. And folks, none of these things happened by mistake. Even the culture of Japan. Japan had a very, very ancient and very rich culture. And the West got in there about, 150 years ago or something. And suddenly we see Japan reduced to the state of the West on steroids. And we see things like Fukushima happening. So that entire cultural aspect of Japan's history has been virtually eliminated. And now we see what's happened with Fukushima, which will continue to affect Japan for a very, very long time. We see the loss of that entire culture, and that's what's occurring in Japan. And that's what's occurred over the last 150 years. But now they've gone and gathered up all the culture and all the history and a lot of the abilities of people as well, and they've put it all into a virtual world, which places all of this information in a very, very vulnerable position. I even know artists who were really, really good artists and started getting involved in digital art and doing things online, and now they simply don't draw as well as they used to because they do it all in a virtual world. So it's taking people's life skills away from them. People find they don't communicate as well with people in the real world. They communicate a lot easier to them online, chatting to them or in text or in voice chats or whatever. It's always a lot easier than what it is face to face. So they've taken that human contact away. So we're losing all of these life skills, and we're losing all of our history and all of our information, all of our data, all of our books, all the stuff that we've had for years and years. It's all being placed into a virtual world. And I think that's something people really do need to think about when we see some of the changes that are coming, is that if there are some aspects of this history or some aspects of your past or any stories or things that you particularly would like to preserve, that you should be ensuring that you have hard copies of these things and not just information that's stored on your computer. And I think it's very telling that the libraries of the world have actually been doing exactly the opposite of this. As I said, the libraries of the world have been digitizing many of the old books that they had and quite literally burning the original copies of many of these things because they've decided that they don't need them, and rather than securing voltage space for them or perhaps building rooms to keep them in and store them, they just digitize them and burn them. And the fact that this is being done all around the world, I think, really does spell an ominous sign, and it's a very telltale sign of what's being done to our history. And in fact, if you would care to delve into our history, well, we still have some there, some available for you to delve into, what you'll see is that this is exactly what's been done all around the world. This is what was done to the Maya. This is what was done to a myriad of ancient cultures. An invading force would come in and they would eradicate the local history and replace it with what is basically the Roman system. Now they are in the process of removing the history from us as well. But they've got to do it very gradually and very carefully, because otherwise people will notice. And so, of course, the best method is to digitize the information, make it available to everybody, but only available in a virtual world so that they don't notice you removing it from the real world, because they've still got access to it until you shut the grid down. You see, the powers that be just don't leave anything to chance, folks, and everything that is done for a reason. And when you find vast storehouses of knowledge being digitized and burnt, then I also believe this is being done for a reason. Because if it continues in this way, then eventually all it will take to remove all of humankind, of the entirety of their knowledge, of their past, and all of their history, would be to turn off power. And I think we're at break time here, folks, so I'll leave it there for now, and we'll go and have a break, and I'll speak to you again in a few minutes. Thanks for listening.